Tiga sampai sini. You just signed a liability waiver, so anything happens to you is not our fault. You will keep quiet and follow instructions. At any point of time, do not let go.
All of us are removing the changes, the job makers.
It was an experience, totally caught off guard.
Feel the vulnerability of
what other people in this position will go through?
The problem in Malaysia is definitely because we close our eyes on this. So it just goes through us like nothing ever happened.
When we first stepped in, we were given like numbers. So I think that's how I felt, like just a statistic.
At one point, I thought I was going to suffocate. I mean, being blindfolded and not knowing where you're going, that itself is a harrowing experience.
Very interesting for the emotion. It's very, very strong.
You can look at somebody and not know that they've been trafficked. So just keep in mind that it could happen anywhere.
Where did this come from, and where was this going? How did this all start?
You can tell us.
Are you referring to what's the impetus of
Skin.
which began this journey for us?
Yes.
TerryAndTheCuz is based in Subang on top of a factory. So we had been there for many, many years. So we would come down, we would know the people who worked in this factory, and we would chat with them, and it was, we knew them as friends. And one day, me and Govin were actually talking with one of the guys, the manager, Iqbal, and then he was telling us how he came into Malaysia and how he was trafficked here initially. And that story actually was shocking to us because we do not, in our heads, we didn't link Malaysia to human trafficking at that point. And this is before Wang Kalian, the mass graves which were discovered at the Thai-Malaysian border and all this, and before the US anti-trafficking report was actually released and became big, and when Malaysia was downgraded. So we were like, oh wow, and that's when we decided, and we were working in other projects at that time. And then Govin actually said to me, look, we need to figure out how to tell this story and bring it to an audience, and that's how this began actually.
I see. I believe you worked with Naganita to flush out the content for this. Could you tell us a little bit more about that process?
Sure. So like Terry said, we heard this story about these guys coming into Malaysia inside oil barrels, and and that sort of sparked this curiosity of like, I don't know if you noticed, but over the last last 7-8 years, every cafe you go to, suddenly there are more and more Myanmarese, Bangladeshis who are taking, who are replacing the local staff and waiters, bartenders and stuff. And so when after this story we just sort of randomly started asking people, so how did you come into, and we were quite shocked to find that almost 70 to 80% came in illegally, or came in undocumented, or came in through some other way, or came in under student visa, ended up being a gardener, or came in under a gardener visa, ended up being a construction worker. And so we felt like there was something here, and there was something that was consciously or unconsciously happening within our social structure. Like, if you go to KL now, to Pudu or to Bukit Bintang or to Central Market area, it's almost unrecognizable to when we were growing up, because it's become a hub for migrant workers and so on and so forth. So we felt that this thing was happening, and all the KL people were kind of, moving towards TTDI and Bangsa, never really going to KL itself. And so we felt that there was something here, and and Terry and I primarily make comedy. So, we also felt like, okay, are we equipped to actually deal with this topic? So we contacted a friend who said, can you connect us with the people who should we talk to? And they said, you should talk to Tenaga Nita, they've been doing this for 30 years. So when we came up to them and said, hey, look, can we find out more? And, and for them, it was a very interesting thing because they do real work. They fight the fires, they go in there, they pull people out of brothel, the full-on hardcore stuff. So whenever you have artists going there to say, we want to make an artwork, they go like, yeah, we've got better things to do with our lives, So it was kind of this conversation, we want to actually find out more, and then we want to, once we know enough, then I think we can create something that will actually not stop human trafficking, but actually make people more aware of what's happening, and it's an untapped thing because you've got your NGOs and your people who support you, but doing it in a different way opens it up to people who come see theatre and our work, and hopefully create awareness. And I think that's how the relationship started. So it was kind of they were very unconvinced at first, but they said, sure, okay, here's a research assistant, anything you need, let us know. That process took about 2 years.
Wow.
So we started talking about this in like 2014, and then by the time we premiered, it was 2016. And over that 2 years, we would just keep going to Tenaga Nita and hassling them, and they suddenly became more and more convinced, and then they started seeing more things happening. And now, like just a week ago? No, 2 weeks ago.
First week of August.
First week of August, we just, Tenaga Nita and us worked together again for the first...
they were the Malaysian government, under new Pakatan Harapan government, has organized Malaysia's first anti-human trafficking conference within NGOs and the Ministry of Home Affairs, and the Ministry of Human Affairs and the Ministry of Human Resources.
And so it was an event attended by about like 200 people from the government and all the organizations. And as they came in, they had to do the skin processing.
Oh, that's amazing!
Yeah, because the event, the government gave Tenaga Nita to organize it because they are the forefront experts, and to welcome everybody, they had to go through skin.
Yeah, and
so they were processed. So you had all these government officials being processed.
Processed at the JW Marriott lobby for it. Which is a slight difference, but it was sort of like, that was what was happening. It was it's pretty much, and and they said, oh, we can do it with everybody except the the minister. So they had to come.
You can't do this to Muhyiddin.
You can't do this to Muhyiddin. So but it was pretty funny.
Instant green.
So it was this very interesting thing about them initially kind of being very hesitant to now kind of, can you guys open the conference with this thing, and then
To me, that sounds a little bit like your initial discovery process. It's just two sides of the same coin, right? Which is you notice something, and then you take your perspective and you brought it to Tenaga Nita, and then that kind of changed their perspective on how to communicate. But it's all about perception shifting for both Tenaga Nita and now even the ministry as well as all of the participants, right?
Yeah.
I think the very important thing why it took such a long process is because it's a very sensitive topic. The people involved in it are very vulnerable, and Tenaga Nita is, which literally means women's force. They actually started in 1980. Irene Fernandez started it to defend Indian women in plantations who are being exploited. So hence women's force. So Tenaga Nita was filled with women who wanted to make a difference, and they were representing these Indian women, and then they realized that there were so many other people being exploited. They just grew and grew and grew, and they were funded by the public, by donations, and until only recently they are being supported by a lot of corporations, because now it's great with Pakatan Harapan, everybody wants to support Tenaga Nita. So it literally, at that time, as you know, the government took Irene Fernandez to court in '96 for exposing how migrant workers were being held and the terrible conditions they were under. She spent many years fighting this to not go to jail, even though she was actually sick. And so they are actually custodians. So when we went to approach them, They were like, wait a minute, yeah, great, you want to help, but everybody approaches us to help. You want access? Okay, let's go through this. So there was a process. As Govind said, first they gave us information. So they gave us statistics, they gave us pamphlets, books, true accounts, witness testimony, and this was like a couple of months. And then we actually showed them what we were trying to do. Then they gave us access to people. So we started interviewing people. We literally traveled from Penang to Johor to KL. Trafficking, I want to tell people this, trafficking does not happen in small towns. It happens right in front of you. It happens we were so shocked. The biggest traffickers and the biggest trafficking syndicates are based in major towns. And it doesn't happen in some seedy part of KL. It happens in the most busiest parts. You just don't see it because you're walking past it in Kuala Lumpur, in Petaling Jaya, in Penang. It's just we don't realize it. It was insane. They took us one night. They took us to a huge building was being constructed. I won't say by which developer. It's a huge developer.
I can say.
Yeah, no. in the central part of Kuala Lumpur, and literally there was a village run full of people who have been trafficked. They've been brought in by boat. They are being forced to work there, and the whole place was policed by gangsters, but not local gangsters, by Thai gangsters. So literally, and the police don't go in. And when we were taken in, they literally told us, this is Tenaga Nita telling us, so if you're going to go in, no women are coming with you. So we had to leave our research assistants who were working with us at that time. So it was just me and Govind. And they said, if you see anything happen, I said, don't do anything. I said, what do you mean? If you see someone being stabbed, don't do anything. You see a woman being attacked, don't do anything. And I was like, are you crazy? They said, yeah, you will stop it right for now. You will get involved and you may get into but once you leave, the repercussions are worse for these people because they have no rights outside and they are being policed here. Even the cops don't go into these areas because everybody is paid off.
I see.
So it was a surreal experience for us when we went through even this period. So you can understand why Tenaga Nita, it took such a long 2 years of research and development for us to actually understand what we were getting into, and why Tenaga Nita were literally easing us into this world which all of us pass by every day and don't see.
It's almost like an alternate universe, as it were. And
it's not an alternate universe, it's a universe we don't want to see.
I see.
It's literally, we choose not to see it. It's there. It's like I said, it's right in front of us.
Right.
And like I keep telling people is like we're not activist data makers and and human trafficking or migrant. It was never a passion of ours. It was something we felt, and then because we spent so much time researching it, we go, well, if it's something we're going to talk about, it might as well be this, because otherwise we just get drunk all the time and just do comedy. So, but the thing but this show literally kind of changed us. So. One of the things we started realizing, because we wanted, what we realized, and this is the other part of the research, which is, so we said that Tenaga Nita, we want to keep meeting the same people. So someone we met 6 months ago, we want to meet them again, say, have things changed, whatever. So they were, and the initial part was very exciting, and not exciting, but kind of interesting from a story point of view, because every migrant we met, or everybody who Tenaga Nita had access to, had the same cover story. Please help us, because they were, because this is what happens when the BBC come and the thing, and they have the same, everybody has like a standard story to tell, and but that is survival, right? Everybody goes through here, please help me, I need my UNICEF, UNHCR card. So, and then so we started seeing a pattern, and then also the translator kept saying, tell this story. So this one guy we've been speaking to quite a bit, and one time we were like trying to get a story out of him, and we went out, and I realized I left my wallet in the car. So I said, hey, can you pay for this first? And he paid for it, and I forgot to pay him back. Anyway, 6 months later, when we opened the show in KL, and and we invited him to come along, and he came, he saw, and then he cried, and he was like, thank you so much, and so, what is the most interesting thing for you in this entire process? I said, remember once we went to that stall and you didn't give me back my money? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. I said, no, that for me was the most important thing, because for the first time in 5 years I felt like a human being.
wow.
The very interesting thing is that people tend to dehumanize victims of human trafficking. They tend to, and it's because when you see somebody, you give them money, and it's like you're literally shooing them away. And what we realize and what Govind is saying is that by actually having a conversation humanizes them. And literally, every time
Humanizes us, I think.
Because we are dehumanizing them. And when you mix in, when we are like, oh, we feel sorry for you. We feel sorry for you. So when he paid for that meal, he was an equal.
So it basically returned his power in that sense.
When they're not talking about what has happened to them, when they're talking about what happened, their lives, we actually got them to tell us what's your favorite song, what's your favorite joke, to tell us the joke in their own language.
Right.
So it was literally it was becoming friends, and that's a very powerful effect.
How did you stumble across that method to kind of break that empathy gap?
So how we talk to each other, like, bro?
Just
it's natural.
Just have a chat.
Yeah, when you don't ask questions, and you don't go there with a specific agenda, and because you got to understand, like when they, for example, when they come in, they know how to talk to the officials. They know how to talk when they run into the police. They know exactly what, because they've been through it. They don't want to get. They literally don't want to get their money taken. They don't want to be arrested. They go to the UNHCR. They know what to say so they can get a UNHCR card. So they've actually been trained to literally, because if you see this cop, you say this. If you say this, you say this. You call this person. So it took a while. Let's go and said many visits. It didn't happen overnight, and literally, even some people didn't open up until the last day of the show. Where there was this girl who literally wouldn't talk and didn't say much, and at the end, the last day of the show, she was just crying. She was crying and crying and crying. How old was she? 16?
Yeah.
15? Yeah, she was crying. She said, today, and so we were like, I was like, and then one Govind, was it you or who? Who went and spoke to her?
I think I did.
He went to her and she said, today is the last day of the show. And he said, I go back to my life after this.
Right.
So it was like, oh wow, because she never said anything. We thought actually that she didn't enjoy the experience. And she said, she was like, no, it was really, she was so sad. So I wish this could go on forever. I was like, yeah, it really, we realized then that it had made such a powerful impact.
So let's talk a little bit about that then, the impact. Like, it's now several years later, and I remember right after the first show started, the impact that I observed was people were just like, I got a red sticker and I want my money back. And like, how? Like, what was the feeling there?
So, yeah, when you watch Batman, I think one of the key plots of that is that to see the light, you must first understand the darkness.
Oh.
and I guess the idea of how that whole section came about was through one story, where they were saying they were recounting experiences on the boat. And they say the first things that the traffickers do. So what happens if the typical journey, say you're coming from Bangladesh? There's a place in Bangladesh called Cox's Bazar, which is kind of like their version of Port Dickson. It's a long stretch of beach. And there's a place there called Malaysia Airport, which is where you jump the boat to go to Malaysia. All right, it's called Malaysia Airport. So you get to Malaysia Airport. So everybody knows it. By the way, everybody knows that they're in for a shit ride. They know that they're getting one packet of Maggie a day. They know that they might die. Like, it's like nobody gets shocked when they get onto the boat. Oh no, they pay for it. And they pay for it because they want to come over to actually find a better life. Like what happened in Europe in the 1800s. It's like what happened. It's human beings. It's what we do. We migrate. We go, right. It's essentially in our instinct, in our genes to always find a better place, better ourselves. So they jump on this. What is a small boat? And then the small boat's about 10-15 people, and then they get to a big boat. This is the 300-400 people on a boat. and then that boat somewhere near Sri Lanka, and then from there that boat takes you all the way to Thailand, and then from Thailand you get into a smaller boat, and then you come to the northern parts of Malaysia. So anyway, or Indonesia or Australia or whatever. So it's all right. It's like a travel agency, really. It's very similar to kayak and whatever. People kind of do that. It's almost just literally reverses the whole network. But when they get on the big boat, now this is like 400 or 500 people that get on the big boat, which are really only manned by about 10 or 15 traffickers, right? So the first thing they do as kind of an introduction or housekeeping is they pick about 4 or 5 people and then they shoot them and throw them off the boat. That's just as random. So now they know that nobody is going to, there's no question of.
And the reason for this
mutiny on the bounty, essentially.
Yeah, the reason for this is because it's to exert control. Because you're talking traffickers who don't speak the language. So how do I control 400-500 people? I impose what is the consequence immediately. So you know I don't have to explain this to you, and you do anything, this is what's going to happen. So it was such a surreal experience.
So for us to spark a similar debate, some audience members don't get to see the show. And only when they don't get to see the show and they complain, I paid 60 ringgit for this, why don't I get? Okay, have a conversation.
And the idea is that migration is for a couple of reasons, and people need to understand this. There is migration which is voluntary. There is economic migration. It means you're moving because I'm going for a job, or I'm moving because, I cannot sustain my family here. And there's forced migration because of social issues, war, strife, famine, things of which are out of your control. Now most of the people who are trafficked don't want to come here. Literally, if they could stay, because they don't come with their families, they come here and they send money back. Or if they come here, they come with their whole families and they have left everything behind. For example, for people who get trafficked in Bangladesh, they literally come here and they try and make as much money and they go back. But they don't want to stay here. It's because they cannot find money or they cannot find jobs there. And if they don't come, their families will literally starve or not survive. Now, for example, the second groups and these are people who are very vulnerable because they are forced to migrate. The second group of people is like the Rohingya, who are facing persecution in Burma, who are trafficked through Thailand. And because of this, they are very vulnerable. And so when they come here, they are literally putting their lives in the hand of other people. So these are the ideas which people don't understand. That these people actually, when you actually talk to them like we have, they actually say they don't want to be here. And that people don't understand that. Which is what we found so invariably shocking at the end of the day.
So I guess, and I think and I just reiterate this, we do this show for 60 people, maybe twice a day for about a week. It's not going to stop human trafficking, but what it does is the fact that half the audience gets to have champagne, cheese, and nuts, while the other half, but some don't get to see the show, and then another half gets transported a kilometer out and have to find their way back. All we're doing is basically trying to get people to understand privilege and not, access and not. And when they do, so when you come with a friend or you come with your spouse and you are split and you both have different experiences and you have no idea why, and the fact that we work with the NGO to kind of be a place where people can talk afterwards. So the show goes for about 1:20. People stay on for 4 hours after the show talking to the NGO about what just happened. So the idea of the show is to kind of provoke, to kind of question, and to kind of basically just do that so that they start the conversation. Because that is something we realize people are going to talk, continue to talk. And what happened, the biggest difference of what we realized, the version in KL to the version that is now just finished in Australia and going to tour to Europe, is the red zone went from having 15 people who were not allowed to just 2 people. And now the 2 people actually makes the impact a lot higher because people are wondering what happened to that 2. And then they come back and because it's just 2, they actually have a much more visceral experience because it's just 2 people who are taken on this blindfold walk. So the dynamic of like everybody comes back because they come back last, and everybody goes, "Are you okay? What happened to you?" And then when they try and digest that with the local NGO, they kind of realize, oh, okay, this is a very similar thing that happened to the Sudanese community in Adelaide, or this is what happened to the Sri Lankan community in country Victoria, or so then they start these conversations. And what we also do with the work is that every city we go to, which now has been 5, and then is that we work with a local NGO using the same formula we did with Tenaga Nita, obviously not 2 years, we have a couple of things and a lot of, is that then whilst the show is about Malaysia and what happened here, when the humanity of it is very similar. So when audiences come back and they talk to NGOs in Melbourne or NGOs in Bendigo, NGOs in Adelaide, they suddenly realize what happens in their own backyard. So for example, in Adelaide, one of the things that actually happened from the show is in Adelaide there are 2 chains of convenience stores, and through conversation they found out that one convenience store was paying $5 less an hour. And just happened to be because we were presented at the Oz Asia Festival, a councillor went to the show and found out about this, and then it became a huge thing. And then now the pay has gone up in that second convenience store. So you talk about what, and then because again, all we always say is we have access to very different people, and very different people react to the show very differently. And if they have a strong reaction to the show, they are then prompted to actually do something about it.
Right. To answer your question is that about the red zone. When we started the work, is that we knew we couldn't make a show which people stood up and clapped at the end. If that makes it any sense, because they shouldn't be applauding. They shouldn't be something you enjoyed, or when the acting was amazing, or the music was stunning. You get what I mean? It needed to be something which affected you, good or bad, which you needed to ask why. Why was it done such a way? Why was my experience such? And then and you could actually talk to the person next to you, or the community partners like Tenaga Nita, or who were there, or UNHCR who were there to ask, why do I feel like this? And because of that, that is why the show is designed as such. The topic today is justice. The people, they needed to understand by watching the show that you paid money to watch a show. I didn't get that. That is a sense of injustice.
Fundamentally unfair.
Fundamentally unfair. And they needed to understand that this is what these people go through. That some of us get to watch the show, some of us get to get champagne at the end, some of us are taken in a container, and literally that's what we do. We drop them
in Malaysia with sparkling water.
A kilometer away without any documents, handphones and IC. Literally, because we take all the documents in there. So you imagine you're a kilometer away from the venue, you have to figure it out how to get back. And another part of you do not get to see anything. There is a huge sense of the injustice of what we did to people. We know. And we knew we were going to get criticized from the start. But that is what we set out to do, to provoke. Now when Govind said, which is right, is that when we did in KL, we did it to 15 people, the effect wasn't as great. But when you do it to 2 people, the effect is profound. Because everybody came after the show and said, what happened to those 2 people? Because when you lose one, it's interesting now, when you lose one you remember, when you lose hundreds you forget. You remember because that one person has a name that is very easy to remember. What happened to that girl? You know why? Because we literally put 1-2 people, because we divide people into cages, these were cages. So when you got 30 people here, 20 people here, and 2 people there, everybody's like, oh. And then you blindfold only these 2 people. It has a profound effect. Because and then we realize, okay, this is what we need to do. It's because it's not happening to the masses, it's happening to very few people. So it had that effect, but it is something we learned along the way.
That's interesting. And I think a lot of NGOs use that method of communication where they make it very personal, right? Think about World Vision, it's about one kid, not the whole village, but you are supporting the whole village. At numbers, it's just a stat.
Correct. And the thing which you said is the stat is very important. Why Tenaga Nita, after 2 years, continue to work with us is because when they speak to someone, they're churning out stats. And because what Skin allowed them to do was make people emote how these people are feeling. People are uncomfortable. We had one person who wrote to us, and I'm not joking. He says, "I hated this show. I had to take off my heels." It's still on Facebook. Literally. So you can imagine what was their priority. You know, literally. And for us, we were like, oh wow, that's such a great comment. Because everybody gets to see that and understand. And then people started writing to her. We literally didn't have to do anything.
So it's almost like that's part of the show even.
Yeah, because the whole idea was to foster discourse. It was not to go, this is a great show. It was to go, of course we wanted to create an experience which was great. Don't get me wrong. But the discourse is more important. And that is what we were trying to promote.
Speaking of discourse, does anybody have questions? Okay, we have questions. Hands up, hands up. Question. Okay, great. We're going to come to your questions and we're going to do rapid fire. But before we do that, I just think I want to bring us almost into the present. What has happened? You guys have the benefit of time. You've seen, you've done the research, you've done the performance, you've seen the comments, and then now what? What does justice look like today as a result? And then questions.
Justice. Justice for us or justice for impact for the show?
Impact for the show.
Very interesting. And this is going to be, going to go by country. Because Skin initially started, we did a development in Penang as part of Georgetown in KL. And then the show is just toured Australia. So in the sense of justice, this is how Skin was never going to convert hundreds of thousands of people overnight. But what it was meant to question is, very importantly, is are we doing enough? And the idea of, if you go and speak to anyone, oh, human trafficking is bad, everybody's going to say it's bad. There's not going to be a single person who says it's good, you know, unless the trafficker lah. But so the question was to literally go to people, to make people understand that, look, are we doing enough? Because human trafficking is the second biggest in the world. Third biggest
after drugs and guns.
Big business in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry? No. For as in crime syndicates. As a crime syndicates, this is what they do. Drugs, guns, trafficking. This is what makes them all their money. So it's quite insane that we hear about drugs and guns, but we don't hear much about human trafficking. And this is what, it's $1 billion industry. So it was literally to get, and the people who come to watch theatre, the people who come to experience this, usually are people who are, I hate to say this, but people who are enlightened. They're usually, you know what I mean? They usually go, okay, yeah, we know this is right, we know this is wrong. What you're not preaching to the, you're preaching to the converted.
Yeah.
The idea was to go, look, you guys, we don't know what the answer is, because there are organizations like Tenaga Nita who have spent 30 years fighting this, and they have grown and grown, and human trafficking is not slowing down; it's getting bigger and bigger. It's not a problem. But the thing is now to ask, the question is that not enough people know that it's bad. Is enough people doing enough and getting more people involved in the discussion? As Govind said, the councillor was involved, came and watched the show, and he made an impact in his community. What Skin does is that before we go to any city to do this performance, we go in a month before. Govind goes in a month before, and with another member of our show, and works a month with the local community partners. In Australia, for example, it was
Welcome to Australia.
Welcome to Australia. So literally, we foster a relationship between people who are coming to watch the show and refugees and victims of human trafficking who have been living in the city for years and they don't know each other. So then a discussion begins, and now there is actually friendships, community being built within. There is actually a fostering of relationships, and that is one of the things which it promotes. The second thing which it actually does, which we still see until today, is that it still promotes a lot of discourse online, which is very important, because Skin keeps coming up over and over again, unintentionally or intentionally.
Even us being here today.
And because it's such a hot topic. Just to let you guys know, Skin was nominated for 2 Melbourne Theatre Awards and won 1. in April this year. And it was very interesting for us, and we will share this with you, because when we did the show in Malaysia, we were criticized for it from the theatre point of view. All right, but when we were like, okay, it's fine. But we went to Australia, it was a very different reaction. So we were actually questioned why were the Australian community audiences more welcoming of a show which challenged them. Challenge them, like you said, physically. The show challenges you physically. Most shows challenge you mentally, it challenges you physically. As you can see, we took your weight, we made you do jumping stuff, we made you go through, stand in line, interview line, we made blindfolded people, we stuffed you into a container like sardines, we drove you around, and then we threw you out a kilometer away. It's physically exhausting. And a lot of people couldn't handle it. And when we went there, we actually were told, which is quite insane, like people came to us and said, you didn't push it far enough. You could have done more to us. It's like, huh? So it's very interesting the mindsets which people had. And up to today, we still get people...
I mean, some call it mindset, some call it guilt.
And of what it still promotes discussion with everywhere we go. Skin goes to Europe in
May next year. And I'm just going to quickly talk about that. I think when we first designed the work, we kind of designed it as a festival piece, so that it would go to festivals. And then, for presenters it's very hard, because how do we, make sense of bringing in a show like this for 60 people but spending this much money? The economics don't make sense. So we were like, after this show, and this show has kind of sparked some very interesting conversations in New York, in Europe, and we're now in discussions with the UNHCR directly in New York about a version of the show which will continue to foster globally in the next few years. But what we have done is actually reverse the model. Instead of saying to festivals, hey, please present this show, what we're doing now is we're actually having conversations with them saying, you need to bid for this show.
Oh, wow.
So because it takes us a very long time to create this show, we need to go in it's not a traditional show that just comes in and, we can't just say, give us a bunch of refugees and we'll do the thing. We need to do 3 months worth of talking community. So if you as a festival want to bring this work, you need to invest in a whole conversation about trafficking and migration. You need to bring in speakers, you need to talk about this, and then maybe we'll consider our work can be a highlight of the thing. But you need to have a bigger conversation before you even consider, because it's very hard for us.
Understood.
To do.
The most important part of the show is when we go in, meet the community, start engaging with them, getting them understand what we're trying to do, and post right after the show. They actually, people who come, the audience who come and watch the show, meet the NGOs, understand what they're doing to foster between the community, and the conversations that happen after that. That is the show continuing to live for us.
Yeah.
And within those communities, within we were invited when we were in was it Bendigo, with Muhammad and
Adelaide.
In Adelaide, we actually were invited to break fast with all these migrants and everybody. It was a community thing. And after that, we found more and more people who were involved within the community who didn't know that these people existed within their community, coming to this community center. So that is the show continuing to live on, and that for us is an impact which is tangible.
And by reversing the model of how the show is going to be presented in the future, I think the conversations get bigger, and cities actually reverse the way of thinking about it, so that they can actually invest in the community. And
absolutely, and for the creatives out there, I think this is an interesting point to take, which is when you create something, it starts off unknown, the value of this thing. But once you've established a baseline on value, what you need to be able to do is you need to increase the value, because with increased value comes increased impact. You can do more, research more, adjust more, and just the value for the people coming, I think.
Just to give you an idea, when we started to create this show, we didn't know what we were going to create. We had no.
I mean, we knew it was going to be in shipping containers. That was all. That was all we knew, and then we're going to drop people off somewhere else. That was the start.
But literally, what was going to happen? The interview process. Why we interview, for example, was because when you're trying to go from one place to another, you're always interviewed. And there's someone determining whether you deserve to come in, which is quite insane. Somebody is judging you from your looks, your appearance, your religion, your economic status, your social status. Yes, you are a desirable migrant, which is what we found, and which we found to be so challenging, because we have that effect. We have to apply for visa, and we have to show, to go to America, sometimes it's required to show your bank statements, to go and visit. So there are barriers to entry. Now that's for people like us.
Unless you're from Norway.
But we go down the social structure. Can you imagine how much harder it is for somebody like that, who's trying to flee war, famine, to find a better life?
The word that I took away was dehumanizing.
Yeah,
it felt completely.
So this is what the interview process is about. Somebody else, your faith is in your entire life is in somebody else's hands. And in that interview of skin, we found that that's what we do. Through an interview, we determine who goes where, and we choose what experience you go. So the creative process was a natural one. It was nothing pre-planned except shipping containers. So it took us. It was a journey for us on this show.
And I see that the journey is still continuing. And to continue the journey a little bit more, we're going to do rapid fire questions. I'm going to go, any more hands? I will just walk around. We'll ask a question, then answer it together, okay? Name and question.
Okay, so basically I really like the idea about you talking about discourse and everything. I believe that everything has a discourse, even this short film itself also has a discourse of maybe showing that showing that voices can be heard and trying to make voices to be heard, because they are the forgotten and they are the silence in a sense. So one thing is we are living in an age where people filter information. Is the age of violence, oppression, and people just want to see what they want to see, they want to hear what they don't want to hear, and they don't want to hear things that make them feel guilty or uncomfortable. I understand that communities are being formed in the sense that some people, like communities are trying to help from grassroots to political level in a sense, but my real question is, how do we make those who are not interested or who are uncomfortable with the aspect that there are people who just don't want to hear about these things. So I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges of this age.
Excellent. And your name?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Nice socks. So I'll let you think about it while the next question comes up.
Hi, my name is Mei, and thank you so much for presenting. This is the second time I hear a presentation, and I still learn so many new things. So I feel like there's so many different layers to really unpack here. I have two questions actually. The first one is, you talked about how you come in from a position of privilege in a way. You know nothing about what people who are trafficked have gone through. Now, you've done so much of groundwork to interview them and so on. How, walk us through a little bit about the creative process, how you want to present that story in a way that really surface their voice and not your voice and not your perspective. And the second question is, you've done this show like many times. How did you kind of put in that process of experimentation and little tweaks along the way as you improve on the performance? Thank you.
Awesome questions. And any more questions coming up? No? Okay, go.
Hi, Patrice. So I just wanted to ask, through interviewing and actually witnessing this through your own eyes, how has this affected your own sense of identity and how you view the world and how you kind of see where you fit in? And are you going to do any other shows in here?
That is a wonderful question to end this off because, segue. All right, recap. Question number one, how do you talk to people that are currently not experiencing the discomfort? Basically, don't talk to the converted. Question number two. Oh, shall we go with that one first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
The hardest thing is to lead someone somewhere and to literally make them do something. You can talk to them, you can try and make them feel something, but if they literally have their mind set up before they come in the door, which is a lot of people, It's very hard. I will tell you a very interesting story. In APW, where we did this show, a lawyer walked up to me after the show and literally said, "Why don't you do a show about the kids who are being abused by their parents in Kelantan and this? That is a more prevalent topic in Malaysia today. And why this is, and I was like, actually, we never said that this is more important than that. We are fostering a discourse. If you feel strongly about that, great. But we have never said that this is more important. This is something which needs to be discussed because it's happening in towns. I said there is things happening in families in the East Coast which is wrong, and it's getting media coverage, and hopefully it leads to laws which need to be enacted. But he kept arguing. He said, you need to do a show. And I was like, no, we don't. Not everything needs to be this. If you feel strongly about this, go ahead. So if somebody feels strongly about this, they should try and make. That's what we are trying to do. But if they don't, I believe that they have their opinions on other matters which are important to them. Because there are a lot of social injustices, a lot of things which are abuses which are going wrong. And not everybody wants to fight for the same thing. So we brought this work to life, and we believe why it's important, because it was happening right very under us in a factory where we were based. And we didn't realize it. And the more we went into it, we realized that it was happening in front of us everywhere. The workers who work who build your houses, the construction sites, your condo, your malls in the center of cities, the people who serve you food in the restaurant, who don't speak a word, who come in so skinny. The person we met, we interviewed one person, he had not eaten in 2 weeks, and he was literally bones. And he is starting work the next day so he could get money to eat, and we bought him a meal. So these are questions which we
Mind you,
don't
it's
ask.
very humane. The work he was starting next day was just sweeping the site first. So they start you off small when you're weak, and then as you get stronger, then you do bricks and stuff.
But I mean, that's the audience of the insight givers.
Yeah.
But in terms of the audience of the participants, how did you identify people that were not yet converted, and how did you?
You can't look. The show is not meant to convert.
Okay.
Like I said, it's meant to foster discourse.
Okay.
If you feel, like I said, you cannot convert someone.
Okay.
Literally, because it is not a hard sell. It is really, you cannot hard sell this.
You just plant questions.
The idea is to plant questions. Question 1, do you know this is happening? This is a huge issue. 2, are we doing enough? These are 2 very pertinent questions. And 3, it is happening around you. It is not happening in Kuala Kubu Baru.
Yep.
It is happening in Damansara Utama. It is happening in Bangsa. Fact, people are trafficked in Bangsa. It is because people are trafficked in Bukit Bintang. There's no money in Kuala Kubu Baru. If you make sense, money is in all where people are. So literally, there is sexual slavery, there's forced slavery, there's forced labor in major city centers, and these are people who are trafficked. So to answer your question, you can't convert, you can't force, but don't give up that conversation. Like we don't, when we were criticized, when we were challenged, we actually sat down one day and actually asked, did we make the right decision after we closed in Malaysia? To be very open about it, because we received in Malaysia we received praise and we were attacked. To be very clear about this, and we actually had a conversation, and we said, did we make the right decision? And we said, Govind and I spent a long time talking about it, and then we went to Adelaide. And then when people saw in Adelaide, it got such a tremendous response. They said they wanted it in Bendigo, which is a small town, and that is what we wanted. We wanted to go to the towns where people stay. And then we ended up, and then we went to Melbourne, and now it's going to Europe. So we know we made the right decision because it's having an impact.
Interesting. I just want to modify that question a little bit and kind of grow it to this one word that comes up when I hear this. Polarizing. You had such different feedbacks from people who loved it and people who hated it. As a creator, what's your view on polarizing your audience? And then we'll jump into the medium.
When we started this book, we knew we were going to be criticized. So the first thing we did was we should be criticized on the art, because that's what we are. We are creating, no matter what, we are creating a show, but we should be very careful that we are not criticized on the topic.
Wonderful.
So hence why we spend a lot of time understanding. 2 years with Tenaga Nita, and they literally guided us through the show. And during every performance in Malaysia, they were there to answer questions. So when we were actually criticized, see, people didn't, the most amazing thing was, people, which we still talk about today, is that nobody criticized the work. Somebody, most of the conversation said, oh, you should have done this in a theatre.
Interesting.
Which we were like shocked by. They said,
you should not have made refugees relive their horrible past. Because if you look, all the community migrants did was just crawl throughout the show. Think, how could you do that? How could they relive their horrible past? I said, did you talk to them? Because none of them crawled. Why do you think they crawled? Why do you assume they crawled? They all came here on a plane. Some of them, the Afghanistan children came here playing.
And the thing is, I said, you are people were criticizing us for allowing people, migrants, people who have trafficked, to be part of the show. And the question was, this is what the question was: were they remunerated? And we were like, wow, did you talk to them about it? And they didn't. So I said, you were the people who were saying. So I said, I found that this was so unbelievable that they were armchair critics. While there, they were like, and here we had a girl, as I told you, crying on the last day of the show because it was ending. If you actually spoke to her, you will understand that this was an experience she cherished. So these are the things which we realized, like, okay, we're not going to care about this criticism, to be fair. And it was, because Tenaga Nita is there, mind you, UNHCR is there, and they are there during every rehearsal, every show. We literally had to pay to bus these people from everywhere, and this is all the volunteers from, and the great thing was, we actually had volunteers from migrant school in Ampang, who are Afghanistan, Afghani descent, and we also had volunteers from a dance school in Subang. So these are people who are privileged. Their kids are being paid to go learn theatre and arts, and they were working together. We didn't remunerate those kids, but that was never asked. So the question was why. So the people were like, oh wow, this is so interesting. They never spoke to anybody. They assumed this happened. So it was very interesting on how people. So everybody wanted to fight for the wrong thing.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
I mean, that's the first impulse, right?
Yeah, you didn't talk to them. And because they are there to talk to you after the show. As you can see, the whole thing was for people to talk about. So that was something which was very interesting for us. But then when we went there, like Govind said, we literally had to chase people out of the theatre.
Right.
In Australia. They were like, okay, guys, we can talk afterwards. We're going to close up. So it's a very interesting effect on how we were criticized here.
Okay.
And the second question was, who are you to make this work? If that makes sense. And we are like, we are no one. Hence why we work with Tenaga Nita. Go talk to them. Literally, that's what we did. They said, you should go talk to them because they are here every day. And they didn't go talk to them. So those were the things which we were criticized for.
So criticizes for the art, not the content matter, because that comes from...
No, they didn't criticize the art. They said the art was great, which is quite insane.
Which is a flip.
They said, you should do the show in the theatre, which is what we never wanted to do. So because they said, oh my God, the dance was fantastic. The show was, the lighting was spectacular, as you could see. The experience, but you should have done it in a theatre. We were like, really? No. So, but they said that, who are you to create this work? One, were there, were these people remunerated? So it was all questions they should have actually asked Tenaga Nita, who was there during the whole time casting the process. And the problem is, we didn't want to go out and defend ourselves, because if once we start and we never did. Once we defended ourselves, we realized that it would take away from the message we were trying to go, which was the conversation. It was not going to be anymore about human trafficking. It was whether TerryAndTheCuz had done the right thing. So we never defended ourselves.
Wonderful.
Because we didn't want to take away from the message that we set out to do. So all we responded is, if you want to find out, go speak to Tenaga Nita. Because you are worried about this topic, right? So go start a conversation with them.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so that was that criticism.
And let's talk about the medium. And aside from deciding on the containers, like how did the interviews convert into what became the body of work that you had?
Look, it was. I think, like once we did all the interviews, we straight away realized it could not have been a theatre work. It could not have had dialogue because that would be wanky and preachy.
Technical term.
And it had to be contemporary dance. It had to be through the physicality of movement and it should be interpreted at your own. So what the show does is it doesn't solve the question for you. It doesn't answer any questions. Wonderful. It just puts out the question. So I think that's how the medium was decided very quickly, because anything spoken would be didactic. So that was one. And what was your second question, May?
How did you sort of tweak
evolve
along the way?
Yeah, I think this was the I think a lot of and it's also something that applies in all our works. I mean, we make primarily comedy. Started off with stand up, and the thing is when you make comedy, the idea is you really want to read the room and you want to know. And human beings are very, very, sad to say, very fucking predictable. Like you do this, they'll do that. And the idea is, so to give you an example, we've done this show in 5 different cities. We've done, I think, a total of maybe 38 shows in total. There are about 20 people that get dropped off in the middle of nowhere with no watch, no phone, no wallet, no money, no GPS, nothing.
And they don't know who each other is.
And they don't know who each other is.
They've
got to figure out how to come back. All 38 cities, all 38 groups. One guy said we should go that way, and everybody followed. So there's a male who went, we should go that way, and everybody followed. And it was the most interesting thing about how we are programmed. Follow the guy. He must know what he's doing. In Australia, it was always a white guy. Well, yeah, I think we should go that way. And everybody just didn't question, and they followed. And this is how we are intricately programmed. Whether it's social conditioning, whether it's 100 years, thousands of years of history or whatever, and everybody just goes, let's follow that guy. And it's human nature. It's human nature to, when you walk in and you see people squatting, you also squat. I guess I have to do this. Nobody wants to look like the idiot. Nobody wants to question. We have had, in a total of doing this show, we have had only 4 people who did not want to do the thing.
Who challenged us.
Hundreds
and hundreds and hundreds of people.
4 people, and they were 4 lawyers who didn't want to sign the form.
It was not about making them go through the physicality of it. It was the beginning of the show of the liability waiver. They said, I cannot agree to these terms and conditions. And we're like, you don't sign it, you're not coming in, and they left.
Yeah.
So we were fine with that.
So it's funny, like the moment you put, because on that form when you sign, we say that you might be blindfolded, you might be let, so people know what they're signing up for, and the moment you say that, you've got them. And the moment you get, and this of course we tried, because it's the same thing, because it's what we do, we conform. We conform to be accepted. It's more important what other people think than what we think.
And just to answer that question, May, is that because of this, when we started seeing patterns, we started tweaking the show. So to give you an idea of how we tweaked the show, something very interesting we started doing later. We would pick 2 women to be in the red zone. Alright? And this is, I'm going to tell you how insane, like I said, this is pattern. Now what we did in Australia is, we picked 1 Asian woman and 1 white woman. Alright? And we went to the red, green, and we said to him, pick 1.
Oof.
Not for anything, pick 1. That's all we said, pick 1. So he's got to pick 1 person now. And he doesn't know what he's picking them for. 10 out of 10 he picks the white woman. So we already saw this, so we picked. And what we did is, we eject that person from the show.
Oh wow.
So now that person has realized that he's got somebody thrown out of the show. So these are things which we tweak the show to decide, to challenge people to look that this is things that can happen throughout. But it was so interesting that we saw he picked Kirby, like, I told you, he every time, because they don't want to pick the Asian. They don't want to pick the colored person. It was so insane.
And the thing is, it's not some genius thing that we figured out, but this is exactly how traffickers work. who's the one that looks like they're going to influence? Well, yeah, that person, you come here. You know, it's everything is a selection process. You make the best educated guess. It's the same thing you do in a bar when you want to try and ask a girl out. You know, you make this educated guess. You look at the girl, okay, this, you know, it's what we do. When you take away language, when you take, it's all body language, you know, because we are programmed to do things a certain way.
This is an interesting segue for the last question, which is how has it changed you guys? Are you more trafficker aware now?
No. So to answer your question, actually, this is the most full-on thing that happened to me during the interview process, and so after this, life was never the same again. There's a lot of things. So we interviewed a whole bunch of gruesome stories or whatever. So just to give you guys an understanding of how someone gets a UNHCR card. Now, the UNHCR card is basically the goal of the migrant community who are not documented, because
people are trafficked.
Because if not, Malaysia doesn't recognize it. But basically, with that card, the cops don't bother you. So it's kind of a get out of jail card, right? Number two, what that card also affords you, and now Malaysia actually has one of the best healthcare in the world. So if I break my hand and I go to GH, it's like $1 or something token. Foreigner breaks their hand and they go in, it's $3,000-4,000 or whatever. So, and this because we don't recognize refugees, they have to pay that much. So with the card, they get 80% discount, so they still pay about $300-400. But you know, so that is something. So this card is price commodity, but the process of getting the card is huge, because they need to. Because a lot of the people are for refugees only fleeing persecution, so specifically for Rohingyas and stuff like that.
And they're put in line to be moved to a country,
a
waiting list to be moved to a country which accepts refugees. So that means they are waiting. They will be waiting a couple of years, but after 4-5 years they'll be relocated to America, to Canada, to Australia, who have a refugee acceptance program. So they literally, once you get that card, then you know, okay, in 4 to 5 years, that's how long it takes. I will be going to a country,
to the promised land,
so a country where I will become a citizen, and then I will. So that card is the holy grail.
Yeah. So now this is where it gets really complex and interesting. Now, of course, what was happening is there was a problem, because there were a lot of these pregnant migrant women who could not afford medical treatment to deliver their babies. So there was this special fast track program where if you were pregnant, you know, you could get the card in a much quicker thing. So what was happening was everybody was getting pregnant to get the card and then having an abortion. Yeah. It gets very interesting what people will do for the card. So to give you context of what I had to do, so I was following, I heard they were going to interview all these pregnant women to determine how pregnant you were. So basically what was happening is you needed to be at least 6 months pregnant, and you cannot terminate it anywhere before they gave you the card. So this was an interview set up to see if people were really 6 months pregnant, and they needed all this documentation, and they needed to prove that by birth certificate or some form that they were Rohingya, right, or a country that would be identified in the UNHCR list of refugees. So I was meant to follow Tenaga Nita staff, who was this woman called Sally Alexander. She's British, so she doesn't speak any Malay, but she had a translator. Translator fell sick that day, and so it was just me and her, and I became the translator. And so, you know, you go, and basically I spent 5 hours interviewing 90 women on whether they were really pregnant or not. And you know, the first few was the most full-on thing, going like, how can I know it's 6 months? Where's your doctor's thing? Can I see the doctor's? Okay, this is your 5.5, come back in 30 days. Like sending people off, and that is how strict you have to be, because otherwise, you know. And after the 10th, the 15th, suddenly I was like the most, sorry, next, no, I don't talk to you, next, you come, you know, because, and after that I went, wow, you know, and one person who said, oh, my husband is, she's Indonesian. No, go to the embassy. You have your embassy, go to your embassy. No conversation, you got to go to your embassy. So, you know, when you're put in this situation to have, you know, like, so for me, I think life is suddenly viewed in a very different lens, you know. it's because it's very human beings will do anything to survive, and I think people exploit that, and so I think in a way it's changed me profoundly. I mean I don't but it just puts
go in and stop trafficking people.
But I think that for me it was a very different kind, being put in that situation and kind of just doing a job of determined, it just shows the volume. It shows how much and what a person can do, or a single person can do. So for me that story marks or encapsulates my entire experience, and I don't know whether it's actually having conversations, it's looking at things differently when you're in bars or cafes and you're talking to people. You kind of ask the right questions. But I don't wish that for anyone to be in that position, because it was quite full on.
Amazing. And true to their promise, it would have taken an hour, and it did take an hour. So amazing sharing, amazing. Tell us a little bit about this change and how it's affected your new work. I hear you have Light out.
Oh, yes. You can talk about Light.
We have a new show actually, which is going through its creative development process. It's on at the Kuala Lumpur Performing Arts Centre. It opened last night and runs until the 29th. Light is a work about post-colonial trauma, which we suffer and Australia has gone through also. It tells the story of Francis Light, who from Penang, and the theft of Penang from the Kedah government and the founding of the British colony there, and continues to the story of his son William, who went on to lay the city of Adelaide. So, and it is 92 years of history of two men who had a profound effect on Southeast Asia and Australia, because Francis Light's entry into Penang was the British first entry into Malaya. The British East India Company were not planning to come here, and literally that changed Malaysia for good. Literally that led to the British coming here, the Indians and the Chinese, and a whole lot of changes which you see today.
And we have railways.
And the railway system. And the interesting is his son went on to became one of the founding fathers of the city of Adelaide.
And here's the best part of that story. So William, when he came, so basically hooked up with a local lass, what they known as Martina Rosales.
Francis hooked up with her.
Francis Martina Rosales. So she was Eurasian or Malaysian or Kedahan or something. Whose oldest son is William. So William is actually half Malaysian. And over the course of history, she's been erased. So nobody knows who she is. We spent about 4 years talking to historians from from Australia, from Malaysia, from the UK, to uncover this 94-year history about post-colonial because William could never be the governor of Adelaide because he was a half caste, and what that meant at that time, and trying to get it out of the system, making him more English or less savage, or so we've been collaborating with another artist, Thomas Henning, who has written the work. So again, it's currently at its first stage. So think about this as Skin in 2015 when we first started. So we're trying out ideas. We're seeing it's commissioned by the Adelaide Festival Centre, and so the premiere of the work is actually in Adelaide in October at the AusAsia Festival. The work is called Light. So we started working on this work literally straight after Skin opened in Georgetown
4 years ago. It's a creative development, so people come in, they watch what is happening, and they give us feedback after the show. This is what we did in Skin after Georgetown. We literally receive feedback, and then we work on it again, and then we premiere it in Adelaide in October.
So expect something a little bit more on the rougher side?
No, this is a nice theatre show. It's got nice seats, it's air conditioning.
Yes, we won't take your wallet. We just take your money at the door.
Hold the phone.
It's a proper theatre show, but creatively it's in a work in progress. If that makes any sense. So literally, it literally questions, because the main thing why we found it so interesting is history is written by the victors, and our perception of history defines us, right? So what has been written actually is not true. And to give you an example was the East India Company claims they came here to colonize us, to spread knowledge. No, it's not it's a lie. They were the biggest drug cartel in the world, which they tried to hide.
Yeah.
That's
They
literally what
supplied opium between India and China.
they grew opium in India. That's why they took away, and they stopped growing crops, which 6 million people died, and they shipped it to China through Hong Kong. That's why Hong Kong belongs to the British.
For the drug trade.
For the drug trade.
So we get to see this in the performance.
It's spoken about. So literally, why history is rewritten for two reasons. It is to romanticize figures, to make men battle sound bigger and braver than they are, to make women more beautiful than they are. Or the second thing, which is terrible, is to legitimize wrongdoings. And this is something which we try and correct. And because our history is not written by us, it's been taken away. So these are things we question in the show. We actually question this in this work. So yeah, come if you're interested, come watch.
Are there shows today?
The show tonight, we run till the 29th.
29th.
So
the show will change every day.
There's some flyers out there.
So yeah, that's what we're doing right now.
Wonderful.